Hello, friends. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this special exploration of some of the deeper dimensions of the Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program. My name's Tammy Simon. I'm the founder of Sounds True, and I'm here with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach, the two people who have developed MMTCP, the Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program. Jack and Tara, welcome.
Great to be
Hi,
here.
Tammy.
Hi there.
Here at the very beginning, before we get into our conversation, Tara, I'm wondering, could you lead us in a centering meditation to bring us all into this moment together?
Yeah, so adding my voice to the welcome. Thank you all that are here. And let's pause together. It's sometimes described as the sacred pause where we just invite ourselves into presence. So wherever you are, you might come into stillness. You might close your eyes or lower your gaze. And let's breathe together. It's a beautiful way of coming together. Nice, long, deep in-breath. Even hold for a moment. And then a very slow out breath. Letting go. Letting go. Letting go. And again, nice, deep, full in-breath. Hold for a moment. And then a slow release. Letting go. Letting go. Letting go. One more time, breathing in, filling the chest and the lungs. Holding. Feel the presence that's right here. Slow out breath, softening down the length of the body, letting go. Letting go. And then just sense your breath resuming in its natural rhythm. And simply observing and feeling this life breath. Just notice the quality of presence that's here. And to deepen that presence through the body, you might soften the eyes, sense a smile spreading through the eyes. Let the brow be smooth, creating a kind of receptivity. Slight smile at the mouth. And you might visualize and feel a smile spreading through the heart. And the spirit of a smile, openness, receptivity, aliveness through the whole body and beyond. Let your senses be awake. So you're listening to and feeling the whole moment. Then bringing that gentle presence to the heart, noticing the state of your heart right now. Just whatever's happening, whatever mood, emotion. And just take a moment to offer some presence and kindness, some gesture of care to your own heart, and notice what that's like. Then opening, widening the attention to sense all of us here. And to sense beyond that, just this living world, bringing a sense of care to all that you can imagine, holding the world in your heart.
Thank you, Tara. Amazing what a shift in the felt sense of things in just 5 minutes or less. Amazing. Our webinar is called More Than a Certificate. And part of what we're exploring in this conversation, you could call it the deeper dimensions in some ways of the mindfulness meditation training program, 18-month online immersion. And of course, people do receive a certificate at the end with successful completion to become mindfulness meditation teachers. But one of the things we've heard from many of the graduates of the program is that it's the transformation process that they've gone through that's actually meant the most to them, even more so than the fact that now they can become a formal teacher of mindfulness, that they are hugely different at the end of 18 months. And that's part of what I want to talk about here is here you two, I think of you as I'll just use it in Tammy language for a moment. Old dogs, old meditation dogs. You've been at this for so long with so many different students, as well as with yourselves and partners and peers. What do you think are the ingredients that actually support deep transformation?
Well, one of the things that happens for me, we've now trained 8,000 teachers through the MMTC program in 70 countries from around the world. And I keep running into people who've been in the program as I travel. I'm in Europe right now. And they say, "Oh, this changed my life." And then I asked, "Well, how did it change your life?" They said, "I didn't have the kind of community that I got in that. I made such deep spiritual friendships. We uplifted each other. I learned the kind of map or architecture of how to teach. It gave me confidence that I didn't have before. I felt part of some stream of um, teachers for generations. Each of them would have different answers. But there was a kind of gratitude that wasn't about a certificate at all. It was really about participating in something that touched their hearts, enlivened them, and kind of develop their spiritual life. And one of the best things that I've learned over the years is that in order to become a teacher or as you teach other people, it brings out the best in you. It changes you. And going through the program, oh, can I do this? Self-doubt, all those things will come up. And the very best in you starts to come out. And to do that with others, it really makes something quite sparkling happen.
Now, before we go to Tara, Jack, where are you joining us from? You look like you're in a monk's cell. Are you on a retreat? What's happening?
I'm not in a retreat. I'm actually, it's so terrible. No, I'm staying with a friend, an artist, Trudy and I are staying, who has a very big um, uh, place in the hills in Italy, in Tuscany. And one of the rooms that we have to be in, this place goes back centuries. And I set my camera up in one of the rooms to be quiet. Um, and it's just beautiful to be here because you can feel at this place at least 500 or 600 years of people growing their olive trees and um, tending one another. So that's where I am. And I'm really
Wonderful.
happy to see everybody on the screen, because part of one of the things that I also like about these seminars is that you get to see all these people who join in together. So,
Okay, Tara, talk to us about what you've learned about the elements that really support and, dare I say, help generate transformation.
Yeah, so ditto Jack, the universal experience of the graduates report is that they are more who they can be. They just feel more full of their potential for creativity, for spontaneity, for love. And when we talk about what it was about the program that actually, what it was about them that actually made it possible to change, I think, a common denominator, everyone came in with a pretty strong aspiration, a longing, a longing to be more awake, a longing to help others. So that aspiration makes a huge difference. But they also talk about deepening practice. There's this saying that enlightenment is an accident, but practice makes us more inclined or more accident prone. And it deepens practice because you have the support. And it's very hard on our own. It's hard even when we go to classes, but when there's the support of people that are really in it for waking up, oh my gosh, it's just so powerful. I mean, I've never seen anyone really go deep on the path all by themselves. And so in MMTCP, there's this support of teachers those who have been on the path, which makes a really big difference in practicing, and also companions. I mean, we all need companions and people that can help us with our blind spots and support us and challenge us and so on. So when people come out of MMTCP, they feel like they found a spiritual path. I'll call it a spiritual path in the sense of not to replace a religion they're part of, but something that really deepens on all the levels because it's this carefully designed container for profound awakening. And it's grounded in the bodhisattva aspiration, which means it's grounded in a dedication to be of service to all beings in a deep way. And that brings it beyond just our personal awakening. And people feel a real enlivening from that.
Just to draw on some traditional elements for a moment here, briefly, because you're talking about each other and supporting each other in the relational field that MMTCP was designed to make sure it delivered. You could call that the Sangha element. So here's the traditional part. The idea that we need the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha in order. I mean, I was trained in this traditional framework. You've talked about the Sangha. It's a little hard to talk about the Buddha principle because here you and Jack then are referring to yourselves as the teacher principle. But I want to emphasize that sometimes it's like, oh, who needs the teacher? I think it's really important that the teacher has a role, and then the Dharma, the teachings and practices. So speak a little bit in contemporary language, how you see the Buddha and the Dharma. You've already mentioned the Sangha being part of the design of MMTCP.
well, there are a couple of things. First of all, what you're talking about, because MMTCP does draw on the mindfulness tradition of the Buddhist teachings, and these are the refuges of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. What we actually learn in doing it is to help people inquire in themselves, what is their refuge? Where do they get support? Where do they go? So that's one thing. It's not about belief, but in this community where we practice together, we deepen our own sense of what can I draw on? What do I know that's true? What are the practices that have worked for me? And then we get to support that. And as teachers, I've been teaching for more than 50 years. Um, and it's an incredible delight to pass on the things that I've learned. And I've grown as we do as teachers. And how do you inquire with people? How do you invite people to open to their own wisdom? How do you bring a field of compassion? and loving kindness alive with others. You know, the stories, the practices, and more than anything, the kind of connection, because you get to have, you know, 18, 20 meetings with your small groups and your mentors, maybe 30 if you do the other ones, every few weeks for 18 months, for a year and a half. And there grows this sense of shared support. And we as teachers get to invite or tend or guide that with all the things that we've learned. And it just makes me happy to do it.
Your happiness is contagious. You've just put me in a good mood. There's a saying that we teach from the radiance of our own discovery, and that is Buddha. You know, Buddha is the awake awareness within us. And so the thing I notice perhaps most deeply in those that move through this training is they really start trusting that Buddha nature, that goodness, that awareness, that love is truly the source of their being. Like that trust becomes really palpable. And then that's what, if you trust it in yourself, if you trust that goodness, you can help other people trust themselves. And that sends ripples through the world. And we see it most actively in the practicum, and that's such a powerful part of the program. So in the practicum, it's learning to teach Dharma, Dharma meaning the practices, the teachings behind them. The joy in the practicum is starting to witness the students that are learning, finding their own sense of, wow, this is already inside me. Wow, I can trust that I have some wisdom. And it's those in the program find that this is the most inspiring piece, is seeing that they can touch other people in that way. So they trust their goodness. And that just, yeah, that's happy making to me.
In terms of the transformation you've seen in these thousands of students, I'd love to hear more, and now not drawing on traditional Buddhist teachings, but contemporary neuroscience, how people experience their mental patterns shifting, if they do. I mean, I think for many of us, we feel like the wiring inside our heads, it feels wired. It's not that easy. You know, I still go to the same place. I've been meditating for gosh knows how long, but still the same place. That's like, it's, you know, deep grooves. How do you see those grooves shifting?
You want to start, Tara?
Well, sure. There's a metaphor I've been really enjoying. I'll share. I haven't taught it much, but it just is. I think it's cool, which is to imagine each day that you're skiing down a mountain. You're going down a mountain. You keep choosing the same pathways. Okay, and so as Tammy described, you just the grooves get deeper and deeper, and the bumps and the exposed rocks and the broken branches. So there's a lot of tripping in the same places and so on. And that's a bit like our habitual patterns of worry and self-judgment and reactivity and fear. A moment of mindfulness, it's like a soft snowfall where we pause, we become aware of what's happening, and it's as if those habitual tracks are filled in with snow. In other words, we're enlarged and we're no longer as identified with the habitual thoughts and feelings. In other words, we don't have to believe our thoughts as much. And there's more freedom in those moments to choose other pathways, ones that really serve healing and freedom and loving. So, just to say, of course, there's pull to the old habits, and what we practice gets stronger. So, there's this potential to more and more regularly open into presence and choose the pathways that serve our life. And just to say that the brain starts changing immediately. I mean, the first moment that you interrupt an old pattern with mindfulness, neuroplasticity, the brain begins to change. And there's observable shifts. People report observable shifts within weeks. Deep emotions, deep conditioning, it takes longer. But the point is that we start getting more and more confident that we can rewire, we can be more free.
You know, when John Kabat-Zinn, a dear friend and colleague, started mindfulness-based stress reduction, again, almost 50 years ago or so, there was very little research in meditation and how it changed the brain and changed our lives. Since that time, there have been 10,000 published studies on mindfulness and all kinds of other research that have been done. And the big takeaway is that the brain can change itself, that we can change ourselves, and that the whole notion that it's fixed in some way um, is false. And that one of the beautiful things from Buddhist psychology and wisdom teachings is that there are practices that make this happen. When you practice with loving kindness and compassion repeatedly in some way, it really changes the way you respond to the world. Your nervous system changes when you practice mindfulness. And even one of my favorite practices is just the simple practice of intention. So if you're in conflict with someone, um, which could happen even at my exalted level in my marriage to another meditation teacher. One might think, what? But it could happen. If you're in conflict and you can take a breath and pause for 30 seconds or a minute and ask yourself, or I ask myself, what's my highest intention? What's my best intention? Whether it's in a business thing or colleagues or whatever it is, and I tune in, but almost always the answer is connection, love. I want this to work out. I care. And immediately my tone of voice changes, my body posture changes. Instead of trying to be right or kind of get my point across, it's how do we connect? We care. How do we express that? And in just a moment, my whole body and language changes, and it reflects what Tara was talking about when we're in touch with who we really are, which is more the loving awareness than all the past conditioning. It brings a kind of freedom and joy.
I wonder for that person who says, wow, an 18-month program, that's a big commitment. I'm used to doing a meditation weekend, or I've been working with a meditation app. And what do you think can happen in 18 months that can't happen with just, a little bit here, a little bit there?
We all know this, because we also have all taken classes or done little workshops or trainings, and they can reawaken, they can inspire. But there's something that happens when, for people who come into MMTCP, when you engage with your mentor, with your mentoring group, with your colleagues, and there's a real field that we're practicing together, and that it inspires you to do your own meditation, to do your own inner reflection. We do practices on forgiveness and practices on compassion, practices on body awareness and breath, and how do we do these things. And you learn these things together with others and you hear their questions, and somehow it really makes you not only alive, but inhabit this whole very rich curriculum that we have that gives you a confidence and an understanding as a teacher that really serves you as a guide for others.
And would you say, from your experience, this is both personally as well as working with people, that there are stages on the path that you could say, yeah, there very definitely are? Stage one, stage two, or is it more blurry or both? Somehow it could be both. Don't ask me how. Blurry and clear.
All of the above. Tara should answer, but I'm just going to use Suzuki Roshi's, Zen Master Suzuki Roshi's phrase, where he looked at a student with such kindness and he said, "You're perfect just the way you are, and there's still room for improvement." So go ahead, Tara.
Well, I think all of us have a certain amount of fixation on, am I improving? Am I growing? Am I progressing? And certainly in the spiritual path, like there's that story about the novice that goes to the monastery and says, well, how long will it take me to get enlightened? And the master says, 10 years. And he says, what if I tried twice as hard? And then the master says, 20 years. And then he said, wait a minute, you said 10 years. And he said, for you, 30. And I love that because a deep part of true evolving is not worrying so much about how we're doing. It's the nature of our heart and mind to awaken. And there are signs. and I see this in people that do this program, of getting more embodied. There's just this invitation to keep coming back to our senses. And you might be listening and realize, oh my gosh, where have I been? Just there's more kindness. I can say when I get interviewed and people say what's changed, on some level, I just feel my heart's softer. There's more kindness. For many people, there's a sense of being more accepting and also more humility. A big one for me is seeing the goodness in ourselves and others. But I want to name the perhaps the deepest, which is that, because Aunt Tammy, you said in 18 months, what's possible? I think trust goes deep. I think there's a trust in doing the kind of immersiveness of practicing working with others and practicing to serve others, where this trust develops, trusting the process in a deep way, trusting reality, trusting it's okay, trusting in loving awareness that that's our nature. And I don't know anything more powerful than the kind of well-being and confidence that comes from that trust. And so that I would say, rather than calling it progress, that's just what we kind of let go of some of the stuff that has kept us from that. And there's more of a true belonging to life and freedom in that.
So we've talked a little bit about how through mindfulness our mental grooves can start to change, and then this inner confidence and trust and self-compassion that can start to become more of the place we go. I think one of the questions I've heard people ask is, as I go through this 18-month program, and I create the space for my inner process, of course, various buried pains are going to surface, various different kinds of trauma. And then if I decide to become a meditation teacher, I'm suddenly going to be working with the traumas of people in the room that are coming up for them while they're meditating. So how does MMTCP educate people about how to work with their own trauma and other people's trauma?
It's an important question. I want to connect it to what we were just talking about. One way of understanding also the shift that happens as we go through the program and as we train and practice is it's a shift from the head to the heart. And that when we meet the difficulties and the problems of the world, when we shift to the heart, we're able to hold it in a spacious love that's not about what's should be or right or wrong or judgment the way the mind works, but really that foundation of loving awareness. Now, you can talk about trauma, and one of the beautiful things about the training is that it is trauma informed, that we really help people understand how to deal with trauma that comes up, and how to ground themselves and how to understand how not to be so overwhelmed. But the truth is that it's not a new thing. In the Buddhist teachings, which we're drawing on in this training, the first noble truth of the Buddha is that life has suffering. You could call it trauma. And anybody not have it, you can say in the room, raise your hand, and no hands go up. It has causes. The more greed, the more fear, more hatred or ignorance, then the more the suffering. So we get caught in our fear or grasping or anger or hatred. And then there's a path to the end of it. And it's actually core to what we're teaching is how do you meet the suffering of your past or the struggles of the world around you or being human with a wise heart. And here are the trainings and practices that can do that. And it covers, if you will, the range of what we now as psychologists speak of as trauma. But in some ways, is really just the truth of this is the first noble truth of human incarnation. And when you see it that way, then there's less judgment. Oh, you're a traumatized person. Less identification. Oh, poor you or poor me or something. This is how we hold this with compassion. This is the freedom that's possible in the heart. And when Nelson Mandela walked out of 27 years in Robben Island prison with such magnanimity, graciousness, and love after all that, he kind of showed the world they can put your body in prison, but no one can imprison your heart. And that's the practice and the teachings in some way that we learn to inhabit and trust as we practice together.
Maybe just to add on a very more practical level in terms of what you'll get in the program is that we do teach those going through the program how, when someone's overwhelmed, how to help create safety, how to support self-regulation, how to calm down the nervous system when meditation needs to be adapted, because not all meditations are good for all situations. And a lot of people say, well, I've just got such intense wounding from way back. I'm still struggling with it. How am I ever going to teach others? And I just want to say, I know so many amazing teachers. In fact, most of the teachers I know have dealt with huge personal suffering. And they have, as Jack described it, they've learned to meet their wounds with awareness and kindness, to bring the wounds into the heart. And their presence, when that process has been part of life, it just brings a depth and a humility and an understanding that can't be learned any other way. And I can say for myself that my hardest times that I would never wished for, have helped me to be more compassionate. Um, and we have therapists in this that have gone through this program who say that the approach, being whether you call it trauma sensitive or extreme suffering sensitive, it's transformed the way they work with clients. And we've had classroom teachers who say they've learned how to take the really anxious students and help them regulate and settle. And I remember one emergency room nurse who found ways to stay really grounded amidst the suffering, just bringing a real steadiness to those she cared for. So the goal is not to become a therapist or a trauma therapist or whatever you want to consider it, but to become someone who can bring presence and wisdom and sensitivity to the reality that many people suffer from very extreme wounding, and how to respond in a way that supports them.
Our session is called More Than a Certificate: What the Journey to Becoming a Certified Mindfulness Teacher Actually Gives You in Your Work, Your Relationships, and Your Inner Life. And we've talked a little bit about what it gives you in terms of your inner life, your inner capacities. I wonder if you can each talk a little bit about what it might give people in their work and their relationships.
Well, to pick up on what Tara was saying, there are so many people who've gone through the program that we've heard from who go back to where they work. A woman in Pakistan who works at a uh, women's center. And in the women's center, there's all the kind of social problems and conflicts and things. And she said, not only has it helped her stay steady and do her practice of compassion, but it's really made a difference for the women who come there. Or the man who was a teacher in a school in Kenya and said, I've been able to help these children regulate themselves and I'm a much better teacher because I have these tools. People who are yoga teachers who will say, it gives me a whole other dimension when people come in, because originally their focus may be on their body and their hatha yoga postures and things like that, or perhaps some mantras but that I can really help them deal with their minds and hearts in a way that integrates it. And so, in all these different ways, in education and healthcare, in business, to center yourself and to use this. And then, if you're involved in all these helping professions, it's a tremendously valuable skill to have.
Here's a specific question we got from a therapist who wrote, can you give me an example of how I can bring a mindfulness practice into a typical session or interaction with the people I serve? And Tara, I think you were going to say more. Maybe you could answer this question and then also.
Yeah. Well, I love this question because, I was a therapist for decades and have worked and trained so many therapists in mindfulness. And, mindfulness means paying attention to what's happening in the moment. And you can do this with clients without calling it a mindfulness practice, or you can do it very explicitly. But just to imagine, let's say a client's talking about a conflict with a partner and becoming increasingly upset. And rather than staying entirely with the story, you might gently pause and say, let's stop for a moment. And as you talk about this, what are you noticing in your body right now? And perhaps they're noticing tightness in the chest or the knot in the stomach. Invite them to stay with those sensations for some breaths and then to sense if there's anything more that really wants attention. And then they say, oh yeah, I'm feeling like I'm not loved. And then how to hold that with kindness. So what happens is that they've shifted from being in a story with a lot of unconscious feelings swirling around to stepping out of the story and into their body, into a much larger presence that leads to insight, that leads to self-compassion. And you can also more explicitly invite clients to practice on their own. And to me, this is one of the most valuable things that therapists do, which is, let's say somebody's struggling with self-worth and self-judgment. You can say, well, when you're at home and this particular kind of thought comes up, pause, take 5 breaths, ask, what's happening inside me right now? And can I meet this with a kind attention? So it's a powerful way to integrate into therapy, whether you do it and actually teach people how to practice mindfulness, or you actually practice mindfulness with them in vivo with whatever is going on.
And then, Jack, you mentioned a little bit about how the training might benefit someone in business. And I know you work with a lot of different people in business. Can you be more specific about that?
Yeah, I've been working with a number of CEOs over the last years, and I get
Well, I think Jack might have frozen at that point.
I'm glad to talk a little about yoga, since
Okay.
just to carry it on, just because that was my beginning, was that I was a yoga teacher, and then I got introduced to mindfulness. So I love that question, and because mindfulness deepens every aspect of yoga. Yoga is a meditation, and so you might begin a class with a brief practice that helps students arrive and settle, and then invite mindful attention during the postures, helping students to notice when they drift off into thoughts and come back to an intimate relationship with sensations. You can offer reflections at the end that help to support self-compassion or presence or inquiry. Many yoga teachers tell us that the training gave them greater confidence in guiding meditation, but also in responding to the different emotional challenges that arise. So there is just more community amongst the students. But what most impacts the students isn't what the teacher says. It's really the quality the teacher brings into the room, and mindfulness and compassion just bring that presence and heart right into the yoga studio.
So I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Am I
We
back
can.
on?
You are back, baby.
I was out there. So Tara probably answered your question about
No, actually,
this.
she talked about it in terms of the yoga teacher who's trained in mindfulness, but I'd like to hear from you about the business humans.
So my example, which I'll talk about because we talked about it in public, was the CEO of Ford Motors at that time. Bill Ford called me years ago during the financial crisis of 2008. And he said, I meditate, I listen to these teachings, but Chrysler just declared bankruptcy and GM did, and I'm about to lose my grandfather's company in the industry on my watch, and I can't sleep. How do I handle this? What do I do? And part of the beginning of now a warm friendship and relationship was, here are practices that you can do, practices of equanimity and balance in times of difficulty, practices of well-wishing and compassion for all the players who are struggling and suffering. Here are things that you can do that will help you fall asleep. Um, and so one of the things that happens when I deal with business leaders is that there is both the um, kind of business side of it, but there also is their own personal life. And how do I manage caring for my business and caring for my family? And there are practices that we teach and that you learn as a mindfulness teacher to first help them ground, let them be in touch with their body and their feelings and what's going on. Now, and then the beautiful thing is, what does the wisest part of you tell you when they get quiet? There's a way in which, in the meditative field, you can invite the wisdom that they carry, and they say, well, the wisest part of me would tell me to do this, but they've been so caught up in what they're doing that they haven't paused to listen and pause to ask themselves. So there's all these kind of things that you can do, and you become in that way a mentor or a support or a coach, depending what things are needed.
I just
We
want to
bring,
add to
oh,
that just one thing,
please.
because I
Yeah,
think, Jack,
please.
what you said is so important, like being able to respond to what's needed, listening more deeply into the world around us. And one of the things I've noticed over the last years that we've been doing this, it's been like 8 years, 10 years, is that people are responding to an unraveling world right where they are. And there's all these crises going on. And we have MMTCP students, graduates all over the world. So let's say, I think I'm thinking of one man in Ukraine, and his yoga studio was destroyed, and along with the whole town, and his family was evacuated. So he's living as a refugee in another part of Ukraine and teaching to others who are displaced. And then I think of people during the pandemic. One woman who's was at a large New York hospital started teaching all the doctor and staff at that hospital who were getting entirely burned out by the COVID pandemic. And then I think of one of our graduate friends in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene, and got together with a couple of other grads, and they were helping with the devastation that came from that flooding. And the list goes on. And most recently, we have graduates from Palestine teaching in Gaza, teaching in other Arab countries, and from Israel teaching in Israel. And as you can imagine, that in places where there's such huge suffering, to be able to be given this kind of medicine of coming into presence, opening our hearts, trying to not make an enemy, but to embrace others as much as we can, is so much what the world needs. So it feels like one of the gifts of doing the program is wherever you are, there is increasing unraveling going on, we know, and it puts you in a position to respond.
And let me piggyback on that because it's so beautiful, Tara. For some of you, it also could sound a little bit intimidating. Like, how could I do this? When things are unraveling in a really difficult place. And, I get messages from people going to work in some of the hardest places in the world, or how do I do it when things are melting down? In medical school, there's a dictum for medical students about procedures called see one, do one, teach one, which may be a little cavalier, but it's partly true. That is to say that a doctor in training will see a procedure, and then the next time they do one, and then the next time they show someone else how to do it. There's something that happens when you start to show other people what you've learned. And even though you might not feel like you know so much and you're such a great, mindfulness teacher or something, when you're in the presence, as you learn in this program, to ground yourself in the present, to steady your body, to take some breaths, to feel into the space of loving awareness, then you can look and say, let's do this together. And you start to trust that you have this in yourself. And that's part of what it brings it out. Whoever is listening, this is really, it's your true nature. It's your birthright to also have this sense of freedom and love, that's born into us, and how to practice it.
We've received some very specific questions about the program structure, so I'd like to see if you can address some of those. Here's one. How much time and energy does the program realistically require each week?
You know,
Can
Tammy,
I actually do this with my busy life already?
that turns out, and this is sort of common, that sometimes the busiest people are the ones that actually know how to get things done pretty well. So if you're successful and busy, you definitely can do it and you need it. And if you're not so busy, then you have the space to do it and it will actually be gracious for you. I really haven't seen it is demanding in the sense that you're engaged in learning and being in the groups, but it's also designed to work in the life that people have. It doesn't have so many hours that it takes you away, but it supports what you do. It's a few hours a week, probably, but it's week after week for, 70 weeks or something like that. Tara, would you add?
Just to say, many people are working full time and have families. And the actual time varies because it's some of the things are optional. So some people dive in more to the reading, some people will attend more optional gatherings. So it's really up to you to customize it to make it work. But as Jack says, I haven't run into people that say, I didn't expect this to be so much, it's too much. It is a couple of hours a week, maybe 8 hours a month. And um, there really is the room to make it your own program.
Can you tell me more about how I'll work with a meditation mentor and with a small group?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's three individual meetings with the mentors, and then there's a small group meeting with the mentor every month that includes skill building practices and feedback and content and check-ins on practice, and then peer groups meet once a month. And then it builds in towards that's the second part of it is really doing a practicum that's a 4 to 6 week intro into a mindfulness class series, and your mentor will review a recording from you and offer feedback and so on. So there's quite a lot of contact with mentors and with your mentoring group that really you'll feel yourself supported as you move through it.
Someone else wrote in, I heard thousands of people have graduated. How big is this cohort? Won't I just get lost in the crowd?
And that's a really important question that we took to heart from the very beginning. And when you're in this program, you become part of a very small 6 or 8 person mentoring group that meets 18 times together over the months and that also meets in other groups with people. So it's not like you're lost in a sea. In fact, you have a cohort with colleagues, you have a mentor who knows you, you have support from other people. And in many ways, there's a real intimacy in the program, and people get very close to one another because of this.
And someone else wrote in, how much interaction will I have with Jack and Tara?
Every month, one or the other one of us leads a live group session. And during it, we might speak a bit, but that's our chance to hear from you and respond to you and get to know you. There's also, in addition to that, there's optional mentor-led discussion groups each month and optional mentor-led affinity groups. So there's many ways to be in smaller settings and really go deeper into whatever is most compelling for you.
I want to ask you both a personal question, which is, it's one thing to teach meditation. It's another thing to teach teachers. And what I'm curious about is what it has called on each of you in the design of this program, when you really have been thinking through now for so many years, oh, this is what it takes to run a program like this. What is it asked of each of you?
Well, training teachers is something that I love and that I started to do about 40 years ago when we had a handful of teachers and we needed more teachers. And it's a different skill than teaching. actually, because I had colleagues who were great teachers, and people would say, train me, they said, I don't know what to do. I somehow, going through graduate work as a clinical psychologist and other things, I realized that there is a structure for training people where you can both give, here's a series of practices, here's how you guide people, here's how you respond to difficulties, here's a systematic way to go, here's a way to engage people where you can be asking them regularly, is this landing? What more do you need? Where are you now? What will help? And it sort of teaches people to have a relationship themselves as the mentor or teacher to others that I have with them, and it's enormously satisfying. And this is one of the things that people who come in the program also see when they look in their mentoring group and realize, wow, these people came in and didn't know, can I do this? Will it be okay? When I got my, they they blossom around you, and we help each other in that way. And it's a really beautiful thing to see. And we've learned just to respond, what do people need? And then the program is designed to offer the teachings, the systematic practices, and all of this. But also, okay, we need more on trauma. We need to talk about differences, different cultures. And we've gradually baked that or built that in over all these years and these 8,000 students. And I'm personally, I think it's one of the best trainings there is anywhere.
I concur, and I also feel like it's one of my favorite things in the world to do. And I think the reason is, part of what's helped me and what I've had to learn to do is sense, well, what have been the blocks for me? What has stopped me from engaging fully and being in flow and in teaching? And often it's this idea that I'm supposed to be a certain way, that I should be a certain way as a teacher. So one of the things that Jack and I do is pretty quickly we try to make it clear that there's not one kind of teacher and that each one of you listening has the wisdom and has the heart to be able to be a channel for these truths. And mostly it's trusting that each body mind can do it in their own unique creative way. We don't have to be like somebody particular. You don't have to be a Jack Kornfield. That's what I had to keep telling myself. So um,
Fortunately.
what I'm really trying to say is that it's teaching teachers is really inviting teachers to trust themselves, trust what's possible, and keep listening inward to see how they feel they most can express their love for love and their love for truth. And that's an amazing ride to be on with other people. That's why we both love doing this so much.
Final question for you. For that person who's listening, they're on the fence. I can't get in, I can't get out, I don't know what to do. I'm called, but I'm not ready. I'm called, but this, that, obstacle, I don't know. What's your advice?
Well, I'm glad to say first, and not as much advice as it's not necessarily the right program or the right time for everyone. Clearly, and I deeply honor that this is like a real commitment. It's a commitment of time and energy and resources and practice and heart. So it helps to be aware of some common misunderstandings. And I kind of named one, which is, well, teachers are a certain kind of way, and I'm not that way. I'm not advanced enough, or I still have too many wounds or challenges or whatever. And the reality is, we're all works in progress. And this path isn't for people who have arrived, it's for people who are sincerely engaged in waking up. So that's one thing I just want to name with that. And another misunderstanding, if you're balancing this out, is that it's only for people that want to teach meditation classes. Many graduates go on and they teach formally, but many others, they bring it to their families. They bring it to their friends. They bring it, as we've been talking about, right into the ways they're already working or serving. So there are some inquiries that I find are really powerful when I'm talking to people that are asking me about doing this program. And one is, how central are these teachings in your life? I mean, is this your life? Is this right at the core of your life? Another is, do you long for a community, a structure that can support you in deepening? Another is, do you want to strengthen your capacity to bring presence and love into your relationships and work? And do you feel called in some way to serve this larger world that we belong to, either formally or informally? Because if when you ask those questions, something stirs in you, that's worth listening to closely. One of the things Jack and I've heard again and again from graduates is, I came for one reason and I left with something much larger than I could have imagined. So I just want to name that out loud.
We're going to end with a concluding meditation that Jack will lead us in. But before we get there, I want everyone to know that we are in the midst of enrolling our 6th cohort in the MMTCP program. And if you'd like to receive the best available pricing for the program, please enroll by June 17th. We enroll people early in the program. It begins in the first part of next year because we match people up with meditation mentors or in their small groups. And that's a process that takes us some time. So again, please enroll by June 17th for the best available pricing. You can go to mmtcp.soundstrue.com. Okay, Jack, bring us home, friend.
Okay, just happy to do it. So this was a lot of words. Thank you all for just listening and bringing yourself and your curiosity or your interest in your heart. Let your eyes close gently. Settle into wherever you're sitting. Take a couple of long breaths. Let your eyes and face be soft. Loosen the jaw. Maybe roll your head in a little circle to release your neck. Let it find a simple upright. Let your shoulders relax and your arms and hands rest easily. And feel the weight of your body, gravity meeting the substance, the steadiness of the earth. You're taking your seat in this human form on Mother Earth with steadiness and presence. Notice the state of your body now without any judgment, just simply noticing whatever's here. And wrap it with kindness. Thank you to this body for all that it carries. And with this loving awareness, holding the body kindly, notice how it responds. And feel the state of your heart and mind. Now, all that your heart carries, your mind thinks, busy, caring so much. And wrap it all with compassion and kindness and say, thank you. Thank you for caring so much. I'm okay just now. And rest in the space of kindness and loving awareness that can hold all of your life and all the things you care about. Let the space be peaceful, your body settled and grounded, gracious. Put a little half smile on your lips This is who you are. This is your Buddha nature, to be present, compassionate, spacious. And you can learn to teach it, to embody it, to be it in this world. It's such a great gift. So thank you. Let your eyes open again gently. Thank you, Tammy and Tara.
Thank you, Tammy and Jack. Thank you all who are here.
Thanks everyone for being with us. Thank you. Be well, friends.